Alright guys, now that we know how to do loops in Python, now we're going to talk about break and continue. Break and continue in Python are keywords built into the language that allow you to control the flow of loops. Let's say that we have a for loop and we want to do for in range from 1 to 6. So that'll print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because it stops just before 6. And we'll say number I like that. Let's run it, see what we get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nice. So starting with break, whenever you put break into a for loop, this will forcefully break out of the loop. So if we put it here like this will basically kill the loop right away. So usually you want to put it behind a condition. So we could say, for example, if I is equal to 3, then we break. So this means that essentially it's going to go 1 through 6, or 1 through 5 rather, and then once it reaches 3, it's going to break out of the loop and then get to the next line of code. So we'll say loop ended. So let's run it, see what we get. So now I get 1, 2, and then loop ended because it starts at 1, then goes to 2, then goes to 3, and then once it's at 3, this will be true, so it hits break, and then it breaks out of the loop. And that's it, that's what break does. It's pretty simple. It's very useful when you're searching through a list, for example. You can search through a list, look for something, and then once you have found whatever you're looking for, you can break out because you don't want to keep looping. There's no point anymore. Just as another example, we can do it with while loops. So we'll say count is equal to 0, while count is less than 10. While that's the case, we're going to do count plus equals 1, and then we're going to say if count is equal to 5, then break. Otherwise, we're going to do print count. So we're simply going to loop to 10. Once it reaches 5, it's going to break out, and that's it. Let's try it out. There we go. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it doesn't show 5 because once it reaches 5, it's going to say is 5 equal to 5, and then break, and then that's it. Loop ended. Like I said, break is useful when you're searching for something, so finding the first occurrence. So let's just say that we have a list of names. So we'll say names is equal to Billy, Joe, Randy, Bob, and Jerry. Let's just say that we're looking for someone. We're looking for maybe Randy. And once we have found Randy, if we find him, we're going to run some piece of code and break out the loop. So we can do that by doing for name and names. And then for each name, we can say if name is equal to Randy. Then we're going to say print we found Randy, and then break. And then we could say else Randy not found yet. Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. We have a list of names. We're going through each of the names one by one, and then for each of the names that we go through, we're going to check to see if it's equal to the one that we're looking for, which is Randy. If it is, we're going to print out we found Randy and then break, because once we find them, there's no point in keep looping. That's just going to waste time. So let's run it. There we go. So Randy not found yet. Randy not found yet because the first two are Billy and Joe. And now the third one's Randy, so it's going to say we found Randy, and that's it. Here's another good practical example. Let's just say that we have a program where it asks you to enter the password, but you only have 3 tries. So let's start with correct password. The one that we're looking for, we'll say secret 123, and then we'll say max attempts that we're going to allow is 3. And now basically what we want to do is just keep looping for however many attempts they have. And then if they get it successfully, we're going to break out the loop and give them access to the system. So really that simple. So we're going to say for attempts in range max attempts. So here we are using the built-in range function and then the number of max attempts to automatically loop through a list of numbers 0 through 2. So just 3 times essentially. And then for each of those iterations, we're going to ask for the password. So password input, and I'm just going to say I'm going to use a format string. We're going to go over those in a future episode. So enter password attempt out of max attempts, like that. So this looks weird, but basically we're building a string. We're saying enter password and then the attempt number out of the max attempts. So once they enter the password, we're going to check to see if the password that they entered is equal to this actual correct password that we set above here. If that's the case, we're going to say access granted. And at this point, you would give them access to the system, and then we're going to break. The reason we're breaking is because if we don't break, it's still going to ask them for the password until it reaches the max attempts. But at this point, we've already found the correct password, so that's why we're going to break out of the loop, okay? So that is why breaking is so useful. Getting out of a loop when you no longer need to loop. That's it. It's as simple as that. So otherwise, we're going to say wrong password, and it's just going to keep looping. Let's try it out. So let's run it. So enter password, we're going to say potato. Wrong password, we're going to say poop. Wrong password, we're going to say secret 123. Access granted. Let's try it one more time. Let's get it on the first try. It should break out secret 123. Boom, access granted, and it broke out of the loop. Nice. Okay, so that's how we can use break within Python. Again, it's useful for breaking out of loops. Continue is a way to skip the current iteration. So like I told you guys before when we learned about loops, an iteration is a single looping of the loop. So when you use continue, just like use break, break breaks out of the loop, but continue skips the current iteration of the loop, okay? So it goes to the next one if there is another one to have. So what I'm going to do is go up here to the top. I'm just going to copy the first example. I'll comment all this out like that. Let's paste it. So instead of using break, we're going to replace it with the keyword continue. So now the way it works is it's going to loop 1 through 5 just like before, but once it gets to 3, it's going to run continue, which means that's going to skip any code that's left in this current iteration, so it should not print this. So let me run it, show you what I mean. Okay, so we get 1, 2, 4, 5. So it skipped 3 because, again, once it hits continue, it doesn't run any other code in the iteration. So that's it. That's all continue does. It's a way to skip the current iteration. Here's the same thing for our while loop. So while count is less than 5, we're going to count up, so 0 through 5. And then if the count is equal to 3, we're going to skip it. So let's run it, see what we get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, same thing. So we're skipping 3 because we're continuing, so it never gets to this piece of code here. So let's see some more practical examples, but instead with continue. So one of them is if you want to skip even numbers. So for example, we do for I in range 1 through 11, so 1 through 10 effectively. And then for each of those numbers, we're going to print odd number, and then we could do I. So we already know that you can use step with range, so you can basically step so that you only get odd numbers, but let's just pretend that's not a thing. If you wanted to only get odd numbers, you can filter those out by doing if I modulus 2 is equal to 0, continue. So we learned before that modulus is just the remainder, and so if you get the remainder of something divided by 2, if it's 0, that means it's an even number. So we want to skip any even numbers, right? So if this is true, we're just going to continue. So it only should print out odd number whenever it's an actually odd number, okay? So let's run it. There we go, get 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9, because it's only doing odd numbers. So in this program, we're just going to collect a list of valid numbers according to some criteria, okay? So the way it works is we're just going to have an empty list here to start with, and then we're going to loop for 5 times. So we're going to have 5 iterations total max, all right? And then for each iteration of that loop, we're going to ask for a number. So simply ask for a number, and then we're going to check to see if that number is valid or not. So the first thing is checking to see if the input is a number or not, because you can, whenever you use input within Python, we learned that it's just entering as a string. So before we convert that string to an actual int type that we can store, we need to check to see if it's a digit or not. So we're going to do that by doing if not user input, the one that we gathered, is digit. So if not is digit. So if it's not a digit, we're going to print invalid input, please enter a number, and then continue. So if they enter a string that's not actually a number that we can convert into an int, we're going to tell them and then continue, so it skips to the next iteration, so it's going to ask again, okay? Otherwise, we're then going to convert it, and then we're going to check to see if the number is negative or not. This is just completely made up, but we only want positive numbers. So if it's negative with this check here, we're going to continue as well, okay? So if it fails these 2 checks, if it's not a number or it's negative, we're going to continue. Otherwise, if it makes it past those, we're going to append it to our valid numbers list and say that we added it. And then at the end, we're just going to print it out, okay? So I really hope that makes sense. Let's run it, see what we get. So enter number 1, we're going to say 56. Enter number 2, we're going to say P. Invalid input, please enter a number. We're going to say -4. Invalid input, please enter a number. We're going to say 23. We'll say 1. Valid numbers collected 56, 23, and 1. And that's it. That's all I'm going to show you guys for using break and continue in Python loops. Break is a way to break out of a loop entirely, and then continue is a way to essentially break out of only the current iteration and skip to the next one. So keep watching, everybody. Hopefully you're enjoying the series so far. I'll see you guys next time, and peace.